We're in Clarendon County near the lovely town of Pinewood. Today we are visiting the farm that belongs to Chase Smoke's family. Chase is a new extension agent with Sumter County, and I am with Dr. John Nelson of the A.C. Moore Herbarium at the University of South Carolina, who loves to go botanizing, and I think you've just about died and gone to heaven down here.
I think this is going to end up being one of my favorite famous botany places from now on.
And John, looking around, people would say, gosh, it looks a little bleak, and that's because this property, this section was logged, which is wonderful. That means that you can send your children to college.
Yeah.
And plants like it when you remove the
there's been a considerable amount of disturbance here in this formerly wooded area. So they cut down most of the trees, as you see around here, and others have been replanted, so they're growing in other forests. Meanwhile, all the plants that had been here suddenly have been released because there's a lot more sunlight coming down on them.
So the ones that were just kind of, oh, here's a little bit of sun every now and then.
Just struggling along, they're suddenly, you know, it's wonderful for them. So they'll be able to attain greater size and reproductive vigor, we like to say.
And there's even something more special happening here, and that's because this is what is called a seep, which sounds kind of like something's leaking. Is water kind of leaking?
It is sort of leaking. And it's kind of hard to pin down what exactly a seep is, or a seepage, sometimes we call it. But they're generally wet places on otherwise a dry hillside or slope of some sort. And the presence of water, generally, the constant presence of water really has a great effect on the resultant plant life that's going to develop at such a place.
Well, while we were tromping around and I had on high boots and you just got your feet wet, we saw a fascinating display of plants, some of which have to have this kind of situation. So let's talk about some of the ones that you spotted here today that are specific to places that have more moisture than normal.
And most of those are wetland plants, that is, plants that are typically found in association with water, or actually in water. I guess those would be aquatic plants. Now, a lot of the plants that we have around here are indeed wetland species.
We saw a lot of sedges to start with. Let's talk about the ones that we saw.
Sedges, a great stand. We're standing right in it right now. A big patch of Ringcospora, or beak rush. There are actually several species of beak rush that are out here, and they're very interesting group of species. And beyond the beak rushes, there are other sedges called, I don't even know if it has a common name, but Furina is a genus. And beyond those, there are quite a number of different grasses that are present.
And we think of grasses as being in more dry places, but there are some that want this. So which are some of the grasses that we saw?
One of the very common grasses that's almost in every wetland in this state is a panic grass, which we found, and it's very easy to identify as long as you have a hand lens, because it's got little bumps on the spikelets.
And you let me look at that a little bit. And then we saw some flowering plants, and everything flowers, but I mean we saw some things that people who like color and more what seems like a flower.
Conspicuous flowers are what most people see when they go on a botany trip.
One was orange, and it was just bright and shiny. I mean,
and it's gorgeous. That was probably the orange milkwort, which actually Chase found, and we made such a fuss about it. Polygala lutea, which is a beautiful thing. But we also saw species of Rexia, the meadow beauty, and then we also saw seed box, the reddish seed box. There's a species called Ludwigia leptocarpa, which grows around here. It's 4 tiny little yellow petals. Beautiful stuff. And a lot of these things would actually be suitable, I think, for a bog garden.
Lobelia.
Lobelia, I think that's kind of my fave out here. It's got a sort of a sky blue corolla. The flower is beautiful. And they really do love these wet places that are full of sunlight.
We saw a clambering vine that you said is nice because it's late, and when pollinators need something late.
It's one of the few viney species that we've got in the sunflower family. And it's got a funny name, climbing hemp. And that's Mecania scandens, which is actually probably in every county of South Carolina.
I think it's lovely.
I do too. I wish I had some at behind the house at the deck.
Well, you have a lot of things there, but I'm sure Chase would happily let you do some collecting. And then, John, interestingly, we do also see things that we associate with regular soil situations that sometimes are even for dry places. We see Bracken Fern.
Bracken Fern, of course, that's one of the, that's kind of an oddball sort of a fern. It can be on the very driest slopes.
Yes.
All you got to do is go to a place like Peachtree Rock to see it. But you can also find that in fairly wet ditches of the coastal plain. And here, it's sort of betwixt in between because it will get down into this seepage area, although we would think that it's more at home on the drier part of this hillside.
And then I've got on a black shirt, and I had to kind of fluff it off because I had a lot of seeds on me, and those were from, I think, just our common broom sedge, wasn't that?
Broom sedge is very abundant out here, and it's like going crazy now. Fruiting, it's making its little spikelets, one-seeded fruits, grains.
And it can be in dry fields or very adaptable and can be found in other places.
Now there are a number of species of broom sedges, andropogon, and they're not always easy to identify.
I'll leave that to you. Grasses are very difficult. Well, John, I was talking with my friend Hank Stallworth, who had been with DNR, and he said these seepages also are important for wildlife, particularly amphibians, which we don't often think about, but they're kind of having trouble sometimes because the ground stays wet enough for them to be able to have their reproductive cycle.
To breed.
Yeah.
And of course, since it is a seepage and not a pond or some kind of a little lake, there aren't going to be any fish to bother them.
So the little tadpoles aren't going to end up in the brim.
Yeah, so that's important if you know, for the herpetologist to be aware of places like this that are at least potential habitat for different kinds of amphibians and reptiles.
As we see our state changing and we lose some of these microclimates, it's important that they are recognized, and I think Chase and his family are saying that this one, they believe that they'll, even though we've got some pines on it, that they're going to burn it periodically, and that will allow the sunlight to continue so that these plants you described can have a vigorous growth.
And that would not keep knocking back the woody vegetation, which ultimately would be invading here. And it would be nice if people do have, the listeners, if they have anything like this on their property, maybe they could take care of it in whatever way they can. Now, that doesn't always mean that it's possible to burn your landscape, but to take care of it in whatever way you can, just to keep it going.
Well, I think it's nice that we've got families like the Smoke who are committed to the environment and the natural community, and that they even let people like us come in and have such glorious days exploring.
They're really nice people.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Amanda.